Widowed Sterile CEO found Black Maid asleep with his twins on late wife's bed. What he did next left her. Lucas Davenport stood frozen in the doorway. His expensive suit still creased from the flight, watching the rise and fall of three sleeping forms illuminated by the soft glow of the butterfly nightlight. The sight hit him like a physical blow. Suspicion, grief, and something else he refused to name. Have you ever walked in on a moment that changed everything? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The twins were curled against her body like they belonged there, in his dead wife's bed, with a woman who was supposed to be nothing more than their nanny. Mr. Davenport. Amara bolted upright, her eyes wide with panic. The twins barely stirred, their little hands still clutching her nightgown. I can explain. They had nightmares they wouldn't settle. He raised his hand, silencing her with a gesture that had stopped boardroom arguments mid-sentence. His voice emerged low, controlled, dangerous. Who are you to them, really? Something flashed across her face. Not fear of losing her job, but fear of something deeper being discovered. Have you ever walked in on a moment that changed everything? A scene that felt like betrayal and comfort wrapped into one confusing package? What would you do if the person you hire to care for your children seemed to be replacing someone irreplaceable? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this story is just beginning. Lightning fractured the Atlanta skyline as Lucas stood rooted to the hardwood floor, his wife's perfume still lingering in the room 2 years after her death. Now mixed with something else, something alive. Get dressed, he said finally, his words clipped with the precision of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Meet me in my office in 15 minutes. Amara nodded, carefully extracting herself from between the twins. 4-year-old Lily murmured in protest, her small hand reaching out. Lucas watched as Amara bent to whisper something, smoothing the child's hair with a familiarity that made his chest tighten. He turned away before she could see his face. The walk to his office felt endless. Family photographs lined the hallway. His late wife, Elizabeth, holding the twins after the adoption, her smile radiant despite the illness already taking hold beneath her skin. Lucas had never questioned why she'd insisted on these particular children, this specific adoption agency. He'd been too grateful for the distraction from her diagnosis, too focused on memorizing the feel of her hand in his before it was gone. His office remained as rigid and ordered as his life had once been. He poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon and downed it in one burning swallow. When Amara knocked, she'd changed into jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back, professional again. But Lucas couldn't unsee the other version of her, soft, maternal, dangerous. Sit, he commanded, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. She complied, her spine straight, hands folded in her lap. The perfect employee, except employees didn't sleep in their employer's bed with his children. You've worked here 8 months, he began, studying her face. Excellent references. Not a single complaint. The twins adore you. He leaned forward. So explain to me why my children were sleeping with you in my wife's bed. They have nightmares, she answered, meeting his gaze directly. Especially Lily, about a woman calling her name. Lucas felt his throat tighten. And nothing helps except that room. Your wife's room. They say it makes the dreams stop. So you thought the appropriate response was to sleep there yourself? His voice rose despite his control. I tried everything else first, Amara said quietly. I wasn't planning to fall asleep. I was reading to them until they settled. Lucas stood abruptly, circling his desk. What else haven't you told me about my children? Something shifted in Amara's expression. A calculation, a decision. Your wife made me promise to watch over them, she said, her voice steady despite the slight tremor in her hands. Some promises matter more than job descriptions, Mr. Davenport. The words hung between them, an admission that raised more questions than it answered. Elizabeth hired you personally, he realized aloud. What? When Amara hesitated, Lucas felt the first cold trickle of real fear. Because she knew what would happen when I saw their eyes, Amara whispered. And now that you're really looking at me, Mr. Davenport, I think you're starting to see it too. 5 years of grief had taught Lucas Davenport patience. But as he watched Amara's hands shake while pouring his whiskey, he knew tonight would require a different kind of restraint. "How did you know my wife?" he asked, accepting the crystal tumbler without breaking eye contact. "We met in college," Amara said carefully. "We lost touch for years, then reconnected before the end." Lucas circled her like a prosecutor with his key witness. His office stood as a fortress of mahogany and leather, unchanged since his father's time. A room where deals were made, empires built, and men like him controlled the outcomes. "Yet she never mentioned you to me." "There were many things Elizabeth kept compartmentalized," Amara replied, her voice soft but unflinching. "You, of all people, should understand that." The subtle challenge in her tone made his jaw tighten. His fingers brushed against hers as he took the glass, a fleeting contact that shouldn't have registered, yet somehow did. "The twins have her eyes," Lucas said, watching Amara's reaction closely. Her exact eyes. Amara's gaze dropped to the floor, her throat working visibly. "Genetics are strange that way." "Yes," he agreed coolly, "especially since they were adopted from different birth mothers, according to the agency." The silence stretched between them, filled with the steady rhythm of rain against leaded windows and the muffled thunder of questions unasked. "Why did my wife insist that I hire you, specifically after she was gone?" Lucas demanded, closing the distance between them until he could see the pulse fluttering at Amara's throat. It was in her final instructions. "Find Amara Lewis. Hire her for the children." "Because she knew I would protect them," Amara whispered. "With everything I have." "From what?" "From who?" she corrected, raising her eyes to his. "Not everyone in your life wants what's best for them, Lucas." The use of his first name, intimate, unplanned, hung in the air between them. "You're hiding something," he said, voice dangerously low, "and I will find out what it is." "I've respected boundaries for 8 months, Amara replied, standing her ground even as he towered over her. "I've done my job. I've kept my promises. To my dead wife, yes." Her eyes never wavered. "And to the children." Lucas stepped back, reasserting control over the conversation and his unexpected reactions to her proximity. "Your job description doesn't include sleeping in my bedroom." "Your wife made me promise to watch over them," Amara said, eyes never leaving his. "Some promises matter more than job descriptions, Mr. Davenport. What secrets would make you risk everything? Your job, your reputation, your future. Drop 100 points if you've ever kept a promise that others couldn't understand." When he asked why his wife would extract such a promise from a college acquaintance, Amara's reply chilled him. "Because she knew what would happen when I saw their eyes. And now that you're really looking at me, Mr. Davenport, I think you're starting to see it too." The photograph had yellowed with age. His late wife as a college student, arm in arm with a young black woman whose smile made Lucas's heart stop, because those were unmistakably Amara's eyes staring back at him. Dawn broke over the Atlanta estate as Lucas spread old photographs across his desk, a timeline of connections that existed long before he'd been told, pieces of a life his wife had kept carefully compartmentalized from their marriage. He'd found the box labeled Georgetown in Elizabeth's closet, untouched since her death. Inside were dozens of photographs, ticket stubs, and handwritten notes, evidence of a friendship that spanned years, not the casual acquaintance Amara had described. The security feed on his monitor showed Amara in the kitchen, preparing breakfast with the twins. Lily stood on a stool beside her, carefully stirring batter while Amara guided her hand. Michael sat at the counter, concentrating on cutting fruit with a plastic knife, his tongue caught between his teeth in the exact expression Lucas recognized from. He paused, frowning. From Amara. The boy looked exactly like Amara when focusing on a task. Lucas rewound mental footage of the past 8 months. The twins' increasing attachment to their nanny, their physical mannerisms, the dimple that appeared in Lily's left cheek when she smiled. Identical to Amara's. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Dr. Reeves, it's Lucas Davenport. I need information about the fertility treatments you provided before my wife and I adopted." The doctor's hesitation spoke volumes. That was 5 years ago, Mr. Davenport, and those records would be confidential. I am aware, Lucas replied coldly. I'm also aware that my company's charitable foundation funds your clinic's research to the tune of $8 million annually. Refresh my memory. When did that grant come up for renewal? 20 minutes later, Lucas stared at his laptop screen, reading medical files that contradicted everything he believed about his family. His office door opened without a knock, Amara holding a coffee mug. The twins are asking for you, she said, then froze, seeing the photographs spread across his desk. The mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. You told me you barely knew my wife, Lucas said, rising slowly. These suggest otherwise. Amara's gaze moved from the photos to the open laptop, understanding dawning in her eyes. You've been investigating me. I've been investigating lies, he corrected, starting with why my supposedly adopted children look exactly like you. Coffee spread across the floor between them, dark and accusing. It's not what you think, she began. Really? Because I think my wife had secrets. I think you're connected to my children in ways nobody has explained. And I think Lucas stepped around the desk, closing the distance between them. Then my father's name appears in your sister's medical files 6 years ago when I was told he was in Europe. Amara's breath caught. You know about Nadia? Your sister. The surrogate listed in files I was never supposed to see. Lucas took another step closer. The woman who looks exactly like you, except for the detail that she supposedly died in childbirth, according to records that conflict with other records showing she was alive 6 months later. The color drained from Amara's face. Where did you find this? The better question, Lucas said, his voice deadly quiet, is why my children look like you, not my wife. Why a DNA test would show they're not related to either of us, according to adoption papers. Yet Dr. Reeves just confirmed blood tests showing they carry markers consistent with. He paused, watching her reaction. My genetic profile. Amara closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they held resignation and something like relief. Your wife wasn't the only one keeping secrets, Lucas, she said softly. Your father lied to you about being sterile. The fertility tests were manipulated. And yes, my sister was the surrogate, but there was a medical anomaly no one anticipated. What kind of anomaly? Superfetation, a rare condition where a woman conceives while already pregnant. Her voice steadied as she continued. My sister was implanted with embryos created from your sperm and donor eggs. Your wife's eggs weren't viable because of her early cancer treatments. But somehow, during the process, Nadia also conceived naturally. Lucas felt the room tilt slightly. Meaning the twins are half-siblings, not identical twins. Lily is from the donor egg and your sperm. Michael is, she paused, meeting his gaze directly, biologically my sister's child. And yours. How do we really know the people we love? What parts of themselves do they keep hidden, even from those closest to them? Share your thoughts below. When he confronted her with the photograph, Amara didn't deny it. Instead, she placed her hand on his wrist, her touch electric against his skin. Your wife wasn't the only one keeping secrets, Lucas. Have you ever wondered why the twins don't look like either of their birth parents? For a man who built a tech empire on data and certainty, Lucas was suddenly drowning in questions, starting with why his 4-year-old daughter had Amara's exact dimple when she smiled. That's biologically impossible, Lucas said, pacing the length of his office. If Michael is your sister's biological child with me, a man who was diagnosed as sterile, then why does Lily look like you too? Amara leaned against his desk, arms crossed protectively. Because Nadia and I are identical twins. We share the same DNA. The revelation hit Lucas like a physical blow. You're telling me. I'm telling you that you're the biological father of both children. My sister is Michael's biological mother. A donor egg carried by my sister became Lily. Amara's voice remained steady, though her hands trembled slightly. Genetically, I'm as related to Michael as Nadia was. And because my DNA is identical to my sister's, I share genetic markers with both children. Lucas stopped pacing, turning to face her. Why the elaborate deception? Why not just tell me the truth? Your father, Amara said simply. He controlled everything. The surrogacy contract included strict confidentiality clauses. When complications arose during the birth, her voice caught. He made decisions that Elizabeth couldn't fight against, not while battling cancer. What decisions? He had the children's birth certificates altered, listed them as adopted rather than born via surrogacy, paid off officials, created a paper trail that erased their true origins. Amara's eyes held his. Your father built his company on genetic data technology. These children were his insurance policy for the bloodline. Lucas felt sick. The DNA test kit sat unopened on his desk for 3 days, its clinical packaging at odds with the chaos it could unleash, the power to rewrite not just his family history, but his understanding of betrayal and loyalty. And my wife knew all this. Not at first. By the time she discovered the full truth, she was too ill to fight it directly. So she created a contingency plan. Lucas said, understanding dawning. She brought you in as her replacement. Not replacement, Amara corrected sharply. Guardian, someone who would recognize the children for who they truly are. Someone who would protect them from becoming pawns in your father's corporate games. Lucas moved toward her, anger flooding his system. You had no right to keep this from me. They're my children. Are they? Amara challenged, not backing away despite his proximity. Or are they assets to the Davenport legacy? Your father saw them that way. The board of directors sees them that way. I needed to be sure what you saw when you looked at them. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. You don't get to test me. Not with my own children. Someone has to. Her pulse raced beneath his fingers. Because the same people who lied to you about being sterile, who manipulated my sister's pregnancy, who falsified adoption records, they're still in your company. Lucas, still on your board, still watching. The twins' laughter echoed down the hallway, breaking the tension between them. Lucas released her wrist, noticing the red marks his fingers had left. Prove it, he demanded. Prove any of this. Amara reached in her pocket and pulled out a thumb drive. Elizabeth kept records, recordings of conversations with your father, medical data, the original surrogacy agreement. She placed it on the desk between them. I was supposed to give you this only if I believed you would choose the children over the company. And now you've decided I passed your test? His voice dripped with sarcasm. No, she replied quietly. Now I've decided keeping this secret is more dangerous than revealing it. The children's voices grew closer. Lily called out, Miss Amara? Daddy. Lucas stared at the thumb drive, then at the woman his wife had trusted more than him. This conversation isn't over. It's just beginning, Amara agreed, turning toward the door as Lily burst in, followed by Michael. Daddy, you're home. Lily launched herself at Lucas, who caught her automatically, lifting her into his arms. As he held his daughter, his biological daughter, he found himself looking at her features with new awareness. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her smile. His, yes, but also the echo of the woman standing across from him, watching with guarded hope. Michael approached more cautiously, as was his way. Did you bring us anything, Dad? Lucas knelt down, studying his son's face, seeing now the hints of himself in the boy's jawline, the set of his shoulders. How'd he missed it? I brought myself home early, Lucas said, pulling Michael into the embrace. Over the children's heads, he met Amara's gaze. Sometimes that's the most important thing, finding your way home. Would you want to know a truth that could shatter everything you believe about your family? Or are some secrets better left buried? Tell me what you would choose. The twins' birthday party was interrupted by the courier delivering the DNA results. As Lucas tore open the envelope, Amara's phone chimed with a text. He knows. Get out now. But whose number was it? And how did they know what Lucas was about to discover? The DNA results confirmed what Lucas had begun to suspect. The twins shared genetic markers with Amara, not his late wife, but they also revealed something nobody had anticipated. Lucas wasn't sterile after all. Rain lashed against the conservatory windows as he circled Amara, like a prosecutor with his key witness. The tropical plants created a humid cage around their confrontation, the truth between them finally as tangible as the moisture in the air. You could have told me from the beginning, Lucas said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "The moment you walked into this house, and you would have believed me?" Amara challenged. "A stranger telling you that your father manipulated your fertility tests? That your children aren't adopted, but born through a complicated surrogacy? That your dying wife conspired to bring me here? Instead, you infiltrated my home under false pretenses. I came here to protect those children," Amara shot back. "To fulfill a promise to your wife and my sister." Lucas held up the DNA report. "The genetic compatibility between you and the twins could be explained by your identical twin status. But this," he flipped to the second page, "shows paternal markers that match mine. Conclusively. I told you the truth about that." "Partial truth," he corrected. "You neglected to mention that the donor egg for Lily also came from your sister, making both children biologically related to you and to me, but not to each other as full siblings." Amara didn't flinch. "Those details weren't mine to share until I knew your intentions." "My intentions?" Lucas stepped closer, his height forcing her to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "They're my children. They're children, period," she replied fiercely. "Not Davenport assets. Not genetic patents. Not vessels for your father's experiments." Experiments. The word hung between them like a live grenade. Amara's expression shifted, revealing calculation. "You haven't gone through the entire thumb drive yet, have you? I've seen enough to know I've been lied to for years." "Then you haven't seen nearly enough." She squared her shoulders. "Your father's company has a genetic research division that officially doesn't exist. The fertility clinic where my sister received treatment was one of their proving grounds." Lucas felt cold despite the conservatory's warmth. "Proving what?" "A genetic modification technique. Selective trait enhancement." Amara's voice hardened. "My sister thought she was just a standard surrogate. She didn't know she was a test subject." The room seemed to shrink around them as Lucas processed her words. "You're suggesting my father experimented on unborn children? His own grandchildren?" "I'm not suggesting it. Elizabeth confirmed it after finding his private research files. That's why she reached out to me after losing contact for years. She needed someone who would understand what was at stake." Lucas ran a hand through his hair, struggling to reconcile this information with the father he'd known. Demanding, certainly. Calculating, without question. But a monster who experimented on his own bloodline? "Where's your sister now?" he asked suddenly. Pain flickered across Amara's face. "Dead. Complications during delivery. At least, that's what they told us. You don't believe it?" "I believe your father would do whatever necessary to maintain control of his experiments, including removing inconvenient witnesses." The accusation hung heavy between them. Lucas studied her face, searching for deception and finding only raw grief. "I'm their aunt," Amara finally admitted, her voice breaking. "My sister was their surrogate. But there's more to this story than you're ready to hear." Lucas. The intimate use of his name again. Not Mr. Davenport, not her employer, but Lucas shifted something in the atmosphere between them. "My father died 2 years ago," he said quietly. "The same month as Elizabeth. Convenient timing, wasn't it?" Amara's eyes never left his. Both of them gone within weeks, leaving the children with only one connection to their true origins. "You, me," she nodded. "And now you, if you choose to see the truth instead of the story you've been sold." Lucas moved to the rain-streaked window, watching water course down the glass in chaotic patterns. The empire he'd inherited, the family history he believed, the children he loved, all of it distorted by revelations he couldn't ignore. "What do you want from me?" he asked without turning. The same thing Elizabeth wanted. Protect the children from those who see them as property. Keep them for your father's research division. Don't let them become experiments. That's it? Protection. Isn't that enough? Amara took a step toward him, then stopped herself. "I didn't come here for anything else." Lucas turned, his expression unreadable. "And the text message you received? He knows. Get out now." "Who sent that?" Amara's eyes widened. "You saw that. Security cameras, Ms. Lewis. The notification popped up on your phone screen when the courier arrived." "I don't know who sent it," she admitted. "The number was blocked." "Convenient. Frightening," she corrected. Someone is watching us. Someone who knew about the DNA test. Someone who wanted me gone before you saw the results. Lucas studied her, weighing truths and lies, integrity and deception. The woman before him had inserted herself into his home, connected deeply with his children, and turned his understanding of reality upside down. Yet something told him she was the only person he could trust with what came next. Family secrets have a way of surfacing when we least expect them. Have you ever discovered something about your family that changed everything? Share your experience in the comments. As understanding dawned in Lucas's eyes, the mansion's security system blared with an alert. Someone had breached the perimeter, heading straight for the children's wing. Someone using the security codes only his dead wife had known. The figure in black moved through the children's bedroom with the confidence of someone who belonged there. Until Lucas flipped on the lights and found himself staring at his wife's brother, whom he'd last seen at her funeral. James! Lucas's voice cut through the startled silence. Behind him, Amara stood protectively in the doorway, the twins sleepy but secure in the arms of their security detail. James Whitfield straightened, his handsome features arranging themselves into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Lucas, bit dramatic with the security alarm, wasn't it? I still have Elizabeth's codes. Codes that should have been deactivated after her death, Lucas replied coldly. What are you doing in my children's bedroom at midnight? James glanced at the twins, then at Amara, his expression calculating. Family visit. I've been remiss in my Uncle Judy's. He stepped forward, but Lucas blocked his path. Try again, Lucas said, voice dangerously soft, this time with the truth. The brothers-in-law faced each other like chess opponents, years of strained politeness giving way to open hostility. James's gaze shifted to Amara. I see you've met the replacement, he said with deliberate casualness. Quite the resemblance to the original model, isn't there? Lucas felt Amara tense behind him. You know, he realized aloud. About Nadia, the surrogacy. No, James laughed, a hollow sound in the children's bedroom. Dear brother-in-law, who do you think arranged it all? Your father needed discretion. I provided it. Get the children to the safe room. Lucas ordered without looking back at Amara. No one's going anywhere, James countered, reaching into his jacket. Lucas moved with unexpected speed, grabbing James's wrist and twisting until a small object clattered to the carpet. Not a weapon, but a syringe. Security, Lucas called sharply. 2 guards appeared instantly. Escort Mr. Whitfield from the property. Full detention protocols. James didn't resist as the guards took his arms, his expression oddly satisfied. You can't keep them hidden forever, Lucas. The board knows what they are, what they're worth. They're children, Lucas snapped. Not assets. They're both, James replied smoothly. Just ask your pretty nanny what the surrogacy contract actually specified. Ask her where the money went. Ask her what really happened to her sister. Amara stepped forward, her voice tight with controlled fury. You don't talk about my sister. Not ever. James's smile widened. Such loyalty. Elizabeth chose well when she found her replacement. Almost too perfect, isn't it, Lucas? One sister dies, another appears. With all the genetic markers your father's research division needed to maintain access to the experimental subjects. Get him out, Lucas ordered, his patience shattering. Full security lockdown. The security floodlights cast harsh shadows across the manicured lawns as James was escorted from the property, his final words hanging in the humid night air. Ask your pretty nanny what really happened to her sister. Ask her where the money went. Lucas watched the security feed until James's car disappeared through the gates, then initiated the estate's emergency protocols. Steel shutters descending over windows, reinforced doors locking automatically, motion sensors activating throughout the grounds. In the kitchen, he found Amara making hot chocolate for the twins, who sat at the counter in their pajamas, remarkably calm despite the midnight drama. The safe room is ready, Lucas said, surveying the domestic scene with new wariness. They're fine, Amara replied without looking up. Children are resilient when they feel protected. Lucas studied his children, his biological children, seeing them now through the lens of James's accusations. What had his father done? What experiments? What was in that syringe? Daddy. Lily held out her arms, and Lucas lifted her automatically, breathing in the clean scent of her hair. Uncle James is scary. He won't bother you again, Lucas promised, meeting Michael's watchful gaze over his sister's head. The boy had said nothing, but his eyes held questions beyond his years. When the children were settled back in Lucas's bedroom, the safest room in the house, according to security protocols, he found Amara in his office, already accessing his computer. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Checking the security footage before James arrived," she answered without pausing. "Finding out how he got past the gates without triggering earlier alarms." Lucas watched her fingers move efficiently across the keyboard, navigating his security system with practiced ease. "You seem very familiar with my protocols," he observed. "Elizabeth showed me everything before she died," Amara replied, eyes on the screen. "In case something like this happened." "And the syringe?" Her hand stilled. "I don't know, but given what was in the files on that thumb drive, nothing good." Lucas poured 2 fingers of bourbon for each of them, sliding her glass across the desk. "No more half-truths," he said firmly. "Tell me about your sister, the surrogacy, and why my wife went to such lengths to hide it, even from me." Amara accepted the glass, taking a small sip before meeting his gaze. Nadia was brilliant, genomics researcher with more promise than funding. Your father's company offered her a research grant with a condition: she participate in their surrogate program. Why her specifically? Our genetic profile, Amara said simply. We carry a rare genetic marker your father's research division was targeting. Something about enhanced cognitive development and cellular regeneration. Lucas frowned. My father was developing genetic enhancements? Off the books. Officially, Davenport Industries' genetic division focuses on disease markers and prevention protocols. Unofficially, human enhancement, Lucas finished, the pieces aligning in his mind. And my father wanted these specific genetic markers in his grandchildren. Combined with yours, Amara confirmed. Nadia didn't know the full scope at first. Neither did Elizabeth. By the time they realized what was happening, Nadia was already pregnant with the twins. And then, complications during delivery. That's the official story. Amara's voice grew tight. I was there. 1 minute she was fine. The next they were rushing her to emergency surgery. No one would let me see her afterward. Just a death certificate and a cremation I wasn't allowed to attend. Lucas studied her face, seeing the grief etched into lines too young to carry such weight. You think she was murdered? I think anyone who interfered with your father's plans faced consequences, Amara replied carefully. Just like Elizabeth did when she started asking questions. When danger threatens those we love, we often find allies in unexpected places. Have you ever united with someone unexpected against a common enemy? Tell me about it below. With the children finally asleep again, Lucas poured 2 fingers of bourbon for each of them. No more half-truths, he said, sliding her glass across the kitchen island. Tell me about your sister, the surrogacy, and why my wife went to such lengths to hide it, even from me. Amara's sister never intended to keep the twins. She needed money for medical school, not motherhood, until tests revealed something no one had prepared for. Despite using a donor egg, she had somehow conceived children genetically related to herself. The kitchen's soft lighting couldn't soften the harshness of Amara's revelations as she placed her sister's journal on the counter between them. A handwritten record of medical anomalies, financial transactions, and ultimately, final wishes that had brought Amara into the twins' lives. Nadia was the researcher, not me, Amara began, her finger tracing her sister's handwriting. When Davenport Genomics offered her the fellowship, it seemed like a miracle. Full funding, prestige, and yes, substantial payment for participating in their surrogate program. But why agree to surrogacy at all? Lucas asked, refilling their glasses. We grew up poor in Savannah. Mom died when we were in college. Nadia had medical school debt crushing her. Amara's expression hardened. Your father offered to clear all of it, plus a $500,000 payment. 1 pregnancy, clean medical history, perfect genetic profile. It seemed straightforward. Lucas leaned against the counter, processing this information against everything he'd believed about his father. And Elizabeth's role? Initially, patient-seeking surrogate. She'd been through 3 rounds of cancer treatment. Her eggs weren't viable. Amara took a sip of bourbon, gathering strength. The arrangement was supposed to be standard. Donor eggs fertilized with your sperm, implanted in Nadia. Anonymous process. But it wasn't standard. No. During routine monitoring, they discovered something impossible. Nadia was carrying fraternal twins. One from the implanted embryo, one conceived naturally. Amara slid the journal toward him, open to a page of medical notations. Superfetation, extremely rare. The timing meant that I had somehow gotten her pregnant. Lucas finished, frowning. Except we never met. Amara met his gaze directly. Nadia was artificially inseminated with your sperm without her knowledge or consent. The paperwork she thought was routine testing was actually authorization for a backup procedure in case the embryo transfer failed. Lucas felt sick. My father wanted guaranteed results, Amara confirmed. But then something unexpected happened. The twins developed unusually fast. Their cognitive markers were off the charts, even in utero. That's when your father revealed his true interest. Not just grandchildren, but enhanced grandchildren carrying specific genetic combinations. The bourbon burned Lucas's throat as he swallowed. My supposed sterility? A fabrication to prevent you from having children outside his control, Amara said quietly. The cancer diagnosis was real enough, but it became a convenient way to explain why Elizabeth needed a surrogate. And Nadia realized all this when, too late, Amara's voice caught. 7 months into the pregnancy, she discovered files she wasn't supposed to see. Genetic modification protocols, enhancement tests. She confronted your father privately. A mistake, Lucas guessed grimly. Yes, within 24 hours, she was on restricted access. Security escort everywhere. For her protection, they claimed. Amara's finger traced her sister's handwriting. That's when she started this journal. And when she reached out to Elizabeth directly. Lucas's mind raced, recalibrating years of assumptions. My wife knew what my father was doing. Not initially. Elizabeth thought she was participating in a standard surrogacy. When Nadia showed her the evidence, she was horrified. Amara turned to another page in the journal. They formed an alliance. Elizabeth began secretly documenting everything, copying files, recording conversations. While battling terminal cancer, Lucas said softly, "Yes." Amara's eyes softened momentarily. She was extraordinary. When she realized what her father had done, she didn't break down, she made plans. Contingencies, fail-safes, including you, including me. Amara nodded. I was the backup plan, the insurance policy. If anything happened to Nadia or Elizabeth, I would step in. Same genetic profile as my sister, but unknown to your father's team. Lucas stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen. Why not tell me? I would have stopped him. Would you? Amara challenged gently. The brilliant son who worshipped his father? The heir apparent who never questioned the empire? Elizabeth wasn't sure where your loyalties would lie. The truth stung more than Lucas wanted to admit. He'd been blind, willfully ignorant of his father's darker pursuits in exchange for approval, position, legacy. What happened during the birth? He asked finally. Amara's hands trembled slightly as she turned to the journal's final pages. Nadia went into labor naturally at 38 weeks. Everything progressing normally until suddenly it wasn't. They claimed fetal distress, rushed her to emergency surgery. I was in the waiting room, and 3 hours later, a doctor I'd never seen before told me there had been catastrophic hemorrhaging. Then my sister was gone, but the twins had survived. Tears slipped down Amara's cheeks unchecked. I demanded to see her body. They refused, said the family, meaning your father, had already arranged cremation due to research considerations. Lucas felt cold despite the kitchen's warmth. Elizabeth, already in hospice care. When I contacted her, she was barely conscious, but she managed 3 words, "Get the children." Amara wiped her tears with the back of her hand. but your father had already taken custody, named himself their legal guardian with you as secondary. The adoption story was already in place. Until Elizabeth died and specified you as the children's nanny, Lucas concluded, with explicit instructions that I personally hire you. Yes, my foot in the door. Amara closed the journal gently. My sister made me promise to watch over them from distance. Your wife made me promise to never tell you they weren't fully hers. I've been caught between two impossible promises, Lucas. The weight of these revelations settled over them both, questions spawning more questions. The house remained quiet except for the distant hum of security systems and the soft ticking of the kitchen clock. My father's research division, Lucas said finally. It's still operational. Yes, under James's supervision since your father died. Amara watched his face carefully. The same James who just tried to access the twins with a syringe. The children are the proof of concept, Lucas realized aloud. Living evidence that the genetic modifications work. And worth billions to whoever controls the technology, Amara confirmed. That's why Elizabeth wanted me here. Not just as their caretaker, but as living proof of their genetic heritage when the time came for you to know the truth. What impossible? Dawn was breaking when Lucas finally asked the question that had been building all night. If my wife arranged everything, why did your sister's journal mention meetings with my father before he died? What did he have to do with any of this? The Davenport family's fortune wasn't built on software alone. It was built on genetic data, harvested from thousands of unsuspecting customers, including a promising fertility breakthrough Lucas's father had kept hidden from his supposedly sterile son. The abandoned research facility lay 40 feet below the main Davenport headquarters, accessible only through his father's private elevator, a chrome and glass descent into a past Lucas had never known existed, where the building blocks of his children's DNA had been manipulated years before they were conceived. This shouldn't be possible, Lucas muttered, scanning his father's fingerprint override to activate the elevator. The security system had accepted his biometric data as a match. Another lie exposed. If Lucas could access his father's private lab, their genetic markers were close enough to be indistinguishable to the system. Amara stood beside him, tense and watchful. They'd left the twins under triple security at the mansion, with instructions to move them to the panic room at the first sign of trouble. After James's midnight visit, Lucas wasn't taking chances. How did you know about this place? He asked as the elevator descended silently. Elizabeth showed me once, Amara replied, her reflection fractured in the glass walls. Before she became too weak to leave hospice. She wanted evidence of what your father was doing. The elevator slowed, then stopped. The doors opened to darkness that gradually illuminated as motion sensors detected their presence. The laboratory spread before them, state-of-the-art equipment under dust covers, computer terminals in sleep mode, and walls of refrigerated storage units containing biological samples. My God, Lucas breathed, taking the scale of the operation. All this hidden from a board? From regulatory oversight. Your father called it his legacy project, Amara said, moving to a central computer station. Elizabeth managed to copy some files, but most of the research is contained in this system. Lucas followed, noting the subtle DG logo etched into equipment. Not the public Davenport Industries branding, but something older, more stylized. Davenport Genomics, he realized. My grandfather's original company, before my father pivoted to software. The pivot was just for show, Amara replied, attempting to activate the terminal. The genetic research never stopped. It just went underground. The screen remained dark. We need authentication. Lucas placed his palm on the scanner beside the keyboard. The system hummed to life, recognizing his genetic signature. Screens illuminated around the lab, data flowing across monitors in streams of code and sequencing. How much time do we have? Amara asked, glancing nervously at the elevator. The building's officially closed for the weekend. Security thinks I'm doing a private audit. Lucas moved to the main interface, fingers flying across the keyboard as he navigated the unfamiliar system. Let's see what my father was really working on. Files opened before them. Research protocols, test results, genetic sequencing data spanning decades. Lucas felt increasingly ill as the scope became clear. "It's a human enhancement program," he said, scanning documentation. "Cognitive development, accelerated healing, extended lifespan, genetic modifications passed to offspring." Amara leaned closer, her shoulder brushing his as she studied the screen. "There, subject files. Can you access those?" Lucas typed a series of commands, overriding security protocols with his administrative access. A database of test subjects appeared, hundreds of entries dating back 20 years. "Search for Nadia Lewis," Amara urged. The system located her file instantly. Lucas opened it, revealing comprehensive medical data, genetic sequencing, and, most disturbing, surveillance footage. "They watched her constantly," Amara whispered, scrolling through daily monitoring logs, even when she thought she had privacy. Lucas's jaw tightened as he reviewed the clinical notes. This wasn't just a surrogacy. They were monitoring the genetic modifications in real time, adjusting hormonal treatments to optimize expression. Without her consent, Amara added, her voice hard, "Look at the authorization forms. She signed for standard prenatal care, not genetic manipulation." And here, Lucas pointed to later entries, the delivery complications. "There's a gap in the record, 4 hours missing between routine monitoring and..." He trailed off, unwilling to voice what the medical notations clinically described. Amara's breath caught. The hemorrhage wasn't natural, was it? "No," Lucas confirmed grimly. "They induced it, deliberately." He scrolled further, finding the authorization order. A familiar signature at the bottom made him freeze. "James, not my father. James authorized through extraction protocol." Amara gripped the edge of the console, knuckles white. "Extraction?" Lucas continued reading, horror mounting. They didn't want just the babies. They harvested her reproductive tissue for future research. While she was still alive, the laboratory seemed to close in around them as the full implications became clear. Lucas felt Amara sway beside him, her composure finally cracking under the weight of confirmation. "She didn't die by accident," Amara whispered. "They murdered her for parts." Lucas instinctively reached for her hand, an anchor in the storm of revelations. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry." Her fingers closed around his, seeking warmth amidst clinical horrors. Elizabeth suspected, but couldn't prove it. "That's why she insisted I stay hidden until I could reach you directly." Lucas turned to face her fully. "Why wait so long? The children are 4 years old." Elizabeth's instructions were specific. "Wait until I observe signs of advanced development in the twins. Things that would prove the genetic modifications were expressing." Amara met his gaze steadily. "It started 6 months ago. Lily's accelerated language acquisition. Michael's mathematical abilities. Their immune systems. Neither has ever been sick, not even a cold." Lucas thought of his children, brilliant, healthy, perfect in his eyes. Not experiments, not assets, just his children. A surge of protective fury rose in him. "We need to copy everything," he decided, pulling a specialized drive from his pocket. "Every file, every record, every piece of evidence. Then we're shutting this place down." Amara nodded, already connecting the drive to the system. "What about James? The board?" "One battle at a time," Lucas replied, initiating the data transfer. "First we gather evidence. Then we protect the children. Then we dismantle whatever's left of my father's legacy." They worked in focused silence, downloading decades of research as quickly as the system allowed. The proximity in the cool laboratory kept drawing Lucas's attention to Amara. Her determination, her strength despite devastating revelations, her unwavering focus on protecting the twins. His children, her blood. "Almost done," she murmured, checking the transfer progress. Lucas was about to respond when a notification appeared on the main screen. Security breach at the executive level. Someone had overridden the weekend lockdown protocols. "We need to leave. Now." He grabbed the drive, still mid-transfer. "It's not finished," Amara protested. "No choice. Someone's coming." Lucas disconnected the drive, pocketing it as he pulled Amara toward the elevator. If they find us here, the security breach alarm intensified, and suddenly emergency protocols activated throughout the lab. Hermetically sealed doors sliding into place, air systems shutting down, a computerized voice announcing decontamination procedures. They know we're here, Amara realized, her eyes wide with panic. They're trapping us. The oxygen levels began dropping perceptibly as the lab sealed itself completely. Lucas scanned the space for emergency exits, finding none. As Amara collapsed against him, he realized with horror that someone had just activated the lab's self-destruct sequence with them trapped inside. How far would you go to create a legacy? What lines would you cross to ensure your family name continued? Comment below with your thoughts on where ambition should end and ethics should begin. The security breach came without warning. Lab doors sealing automatically, oxygen levels dropping, a computerized voice announcing decontamination procedures. As Amara collapsed against him, Lucas realized with horror that someone had just activated the lab's self-destruct sequence with them trapped inside. With oxygen depleting and no way out, Lucas pulled Amara into the narrow decontamination shower, the only space with independent ventilation. Their bodies pressed together as they gasped for the same precious air. Breathe shallow, he instructed, activating the emergency shower protocol. Water wouldn't help their situation, but the shower system operated on an independent circuit, one that might maintain minimal airflow even during decontamination procedures. Steam clouded the glass enclosure as emergency protocols activated the shower's heat, transforming their sanctuary into a tropical prison, their clothes dampening as they shared body heat and whispered contingency plans between increasingly desperate breaths. The children, Amara gasped, her eyes wide with fear. If we don't make it out, we will, Lucas insisted, pulling his phone from his pocket. No signal penetrated the lab's secure walls. Think, there has to be an override. The computerized voice continued its calm countdown to full decontamination, a euphemism for the removal of all biological material through chemical sterilization. 5 minutes remained. Your father, Amara said suddenly, fighting to stay conscious as oxygen levels continued dropping. He wouldn't build a death trap without an escape hatch for himself. Lucas scanned the shower enclosure, looking for anything unusual. The panel, he realized, pointing to a seam in the glass wall. It's different from the others. Working together, they pressed against various points until a hidden access panel revealed itself, a biometric scanner concealed within what looked like a standard soap dispenser. Blood authentication, Lucas realized. It needs a Davenport genetic signature. Without hesitation, he smashed his fist against the edge of the metal bench, splitting the skin across his knuckles. Blood welled immediately. He pressed his bleeding hand against the scanner, leaving a crimson smear across its surface. For 3 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then a green light pulsed, and a section of the shower wall slid open, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel. Go! Lucas pushed Amara toward the opening. Not without you, she insisted, gripping his arm. I'm right behind you. He shoved the data drive into her hand. This matters more than either of us. Amara hesitated only a moment before crawling into the tunnel. Lucas followed, pulling the panel closed behind them just as the decontamination sequence reached its final phase. Through the glass, they watched as the laboratory filled with a white mist that would destroy any organic material it touched. The maintenance tunnel extended 50 yards, leading to a utility access point that emerged incongruously in the parking garage 3 levels below the main building. They stumbled out, gasping in the relative freshness of underground air. My car, Lucas managed, leading them toward his reserved space near the elevator. Security cameras, we need to avoid them. Amara moved with surprising stealth despite her ordeal. Keeping to blind spots she seemed to know instinctively. Elizabeth mapped them all, she explained, catching his questioning look. Before she got too sick, she knew we might need escape routes. They reached his car undetected, sliding inside just as the garage's security patrol rounded the far corner. Lucas started the engine and pulled out casually, nodding to the guards they passed. Call the house, He instructed Amara, once they'd cleared the building, check on the children. She connected through the car's secure system, relief flooding her face when the head of security confirmed the twins were safe, though asking for their father and Miss Amara. "We'll be home in 20 minutes, Lucas assured them, then killed the connection. Someone just tried to eliminate us both. Someone who knew we were in that lab. James, Amara suggested, her breathing still uneven. Maybe. Or someone on the board. Lucas's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Either way, they're connected to what happened to your sister. To my wife. To my father. Amara turned to face him, raindrops from the shower still clinging to her eyelashes. What happens now? Now we go nuclear, Lucas replied grimly. Full disclosure to the authorities. Medical ethics violations. Corporate fraud. Murder. And the children? We protect them. At all costs. He glanced at her, sudden awareness of their shared ordeal and survival, creating an unexpected intimacy. They need both of us now. The city lights blurred through rain-streaked windows as they drove in tense silence, each processing what they discovered and what they'd narrowly escaped. When Lucas's hand found Amara's across the center console, neither acknowledged it verbally, but their fingers interlaced with natural certainty. They were 10 minutes from the estate when Amara's phone chimed with an incoming message. She checked it, then froze. It's from an encrypted number, she said, showing Lucas the screen at the next stoplight. The message was simple: meeting the Davenport children's legal guardian tomorrow, 10 a.m. Board approval secured. Custody transfer documents prepared. Lucas stared at the message, rage building. They're making their move, using the weekend to bypass normal procedures. Can they do that? Legally? No. But if they manipulate enough paperwork, create enough confusion about paternity and birth records, which we now know they've done before, they could tie us up in court for years. While experimenting on the children, Amara concluded, horror in her voice. Lucas made a sharp turn, heading away from the direct route home. We're not going back to the house. Not yet. But the children are safer with full security than with us right now. He accelerated, heading toward the outskirts of the city. We need a secure location to examine that data drive, and to make a plan that doesn't end with both of us eliminated and the twins in James's custody. The rain intensified as they drove, creating a cocoon of white noise around them. Lucas navigated to a small, nondescript building in an industrial area, a private data center owned by a subsidiary company few knew he controlled personally. Inside, the facility hummed with servers and cooling systems. A security guard nodded recognition, accepting Lucas's explanation of weekend work without question. They settled in a small conference room, connecting the drive to a secure terminal. This could take hours to analyze, Amara said, watching the files transfer to the protected system. Then we'd better get comfortable. Lucas removed his suit jacket, still damp from the shower. Amara's clothes clung to her frame similarly, her professional facade literally and figuratively washed away by their ordeal. Hours of focused work followed, interrupted only by coffee deliveries from the night security staff. They worked side by side, cataloging evidence, building a case against the board members involved in the genetic experimentation program. It was nearing dawn when Amara's exhaustion finally caught up with her. She swayed slightly in her chair, eyelids drooping despite her determination. Rest, Lucas urged, guiding her to a small couch in the corner of the room. I'll keep working. Wake me in an hour, she mumbled, already half asleep. Lucas continued analyzing data, but found his attention repeatedly drawn to the woman sleeping across the room. The woman who had risked everything to protect his children, who carried in her blood the same genetic markers that made the twins so valuable to his father's research division. When the ventilation system cycled on, Amara shivered in her sleep. Lucas hesitated only briefly before sitting beside her, offering warmth and protection without waking her. She instinctively turned toward him, seeking comfort even in unconsciousness. Her lips tasted of fear and determination as he finally surrendered to the pull between them. Her fingers gripping his shirt not in panic but in certainty, their bodies finding harmony even as the weight of their discoveries threatened to crush them both. "This isn't about survival anymore," he whispered against her mouth when they finally paused for breath. "No," she agreed, her eyes clear and certain as they held his. "It's about choosing what matters, no matter what comes next. They say near-death experiences show us what truly matters. Have you ever had a moment of clarity during crisis that changed how you felt about someone? Share your story in the comments." When the security override finally unlocked the doors, they emerged to find James waiting with armed men and board documents authorizing him as the twins' legal guardian in the event of Lucas's death. "You should have stayed in there," James said calmly. "This would have been easier." The custody papers James slid across the conference table claimed Lucas was genetically unrelated to the twins, a lie contradicted by the DNA test in Lucas's pocket, but revealing it would expose Amara's connection and put her at risk. The Davenport Industries boardroom had witnessed generations of power plays, its walnut table scarred with invisible battle lines, but never had the stakes been as personal as today. With enlarged photos of the twins displayed on the presentation screen, reduced to assets in a corporate war. "The situation is straightforward," James announced to the hastily assembled board members. "These children are not Lucas Davenport's biological offspring, despite the adoption charade my sister maintained. They are, in fact, research subjects under company jurisdiction." Lucas remained standing, refusing the chair at the head of the table, his father's chair now technically his. Amara sat rigidly beside him, her hand discreetly touching his beneath the table's edge. "That's a fascinating theory," Lucas replied, his voice arctic. "Almost as fascinating as how you managed to call this emergency board meeting without my knowledge." Bernard Reynolds, the eldest board member, cleared his throat. Mr. Whitfield presented compelling evidence that required immediate attention. "Corporate bylaws permit emergency sessions when intellectual property may be at risk." "Intellectual property?" Lucas repeated, glancing at the photographs of his children. "Is that what we're calling them now?" "The genetic modifications pioneered in these subjects represent billions in potential revenue," James continued smoothly. "Breakthrough treatments for cognitive disorders, accelerated healing protocols, extended lifespan. The market applications are limitless. And you need custody to continue testing," Lucas concluded. "Access," James corrected with a thin smile. "Ongoing medical monitoring. Nothing invasive." Amara's fingers tightened around Lucas's, a warning to maintain control. They'd planned this confrontation carefully, knowing emotion would undermine their position. "You're fighting for control of genetic patents," Lucas said, understanding dawning on the other board members' faces. "The twins aren't your family. They're your proof of concept for technology worth billions." "Don't be dramatic," James scoffed. "They'll live privileged lives. The best education, the best care. All we require are regular samples." "Like you took for Nadia Lewis?" Lucas asked quietly. A flicker of unease crossed James's face. The surrogate understood the arrangement. "My sister understood she was carrying children." Amara spoke for the first time, her voice steady despite the rage beneath it. "Not that she would be harvested for parts." Murmurs rippled through the board members. Clearly not all had been briefed on the program's darker aspects. "These accusations are absurd," James insisted, but his confidence had faltered. Lucas laid a USB drive on the table. "Everything is here. The illegal experimentation, the falsified consent forms, the authorized extraction protocol that killed Nadia Lewis, my father's manipulation of my fertility results, and James's signature on every critical document." The board vote deadlocked, buying them 48 hours before the next meeting. As they left the building, Lucas's phone chimed with an encrypted message from his wife's private account, scheduled to send only in case of emergency. "If you're reading this, I'm gone and they're coming for our children. There's only one way to protect them now. Marry her." The marriage license felt cold in Amara's hands. A legal fiction proposed by a dead woman, designed to create an unbreakable bond between two people who barely trusted each other, yet who now shared the only thing that mattered: keeping the twins safe. "This is insane," Amara whispered, staring at the document in Lucas's home office. "We can't just..." Elizabeth thought otherwise, Lucas replied, his voice tight with exhaustion. They'd been awake for nearly 36 hours, moving between legal consultations and security upgrades. The message was clear. Marriage creates legal standing that even the board can't easily challenge. There are other ways to fight this. Are there? Lucas challenged, running a hand through his disheveled hair. The board is split. James has allies in regulatory agencies. The children's legal status is deliberately muddled by my father's manipulations. We need something definitive. Amara paced the office, the absurdity of the situation hitting her in waves. You barely know me. I know enough, Lucas countered, his gaze following her movement. I know you've protected my children at personal risk. I know you've honored promises to both your sister and my wife. I know we survived an assassination attempt together. That's not a basis for marriage. It's better than most, he said with unexpected wryness. Look, this is a legal strategy, not a romantic proposal. We create an uncontestable family unit. You gain parental rights as the children's closest living blood relative. I maintain my rights as their father. Together, we present a united front that even James can't easily break. The judge's chambers offered none of the romance Amara had once dreamed of, just fluorescent lighting and legal documents. Yet when Lucas slid the ring onto her finger, his hand trembled with something beyond their contractual arrangement. By the power vested in me, the judge intoned, completing the brief ceremony with practiced efficiency. Outside, their lawyer waited with the paperwork that would immediately file for Amara's adoption of the twins as their biological aunt. A procedural move that, combined with the marriage, created a legal fortress around the children. It's done, the lawyer confirmed, accepting the signed documents. I'll file these immediately and notify the board that any custody hearing must now include Mrs. Davenport as a biological relative with priority standing. The name, Mrs. Davenport, landed strangely in Amara's ears. She caught Lucas watching her reaction, his expression unreadable. The courthouse steps should have felt like victory, but the black sedan parked across the street told a different story. Someone was watching. As Lucas pulled her close for the benefit of the observer, he whispered against her hair, "Don't react, but we're being followed. And I think it's time we gave them a show they'll never forget." His arm around her waist guided her toward their waiting car. The physical contact simultaneously strange and familiar after all they'd endured together. The platinum band on her finger caught the sunlight, throwing fragments of brightness across their path, a reminder that they'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed for better or worse. Their wedding night was meant to be for show, a carefully orchestrated deception for anyone watching, until the moment Lucas closed the bedroom door and Amara realized that sometimes pretending reveals what's real. The Davenport Lake house stood isolated on 50 acres of private woodland, 2 hours from Atlanta, close enough for emergency return, remote enough to evade easy surveillance. They'd arrived at sunset, making a visible show of carrying luggage inside, drawing curtains partially closed, leaving lights on in strategic rooms. They'll have long-range surveillance, Lucas explained, sweeping the main living area for electronic devices. Audio is unlikely at this distance, but they'll watch patterns of movement, light, basic activities. Amara nodded, unpacking the equipment they brought. Counter-surveillance tools, secure communication devices, and the evidence they'd gathered against James and his allies on the board. "The children are safe?" she asked for the third time since they'd left. "Triple security, remote location, no digital footprint," Lucas confirmed. "No one gets near them without my direct voice authentication, not even household staff." Moonlight sliced through plantation shutters, painting silver stripes across the bed where they lay discussing strategy in whispers. Two people playing roles that increasingly felt like their truest selves. "We should consider how this ends," Amara said quietly. "After we've neutralized the threat. After the children are safe." Lucas turned toward her in the half-darkness. "You mean the marriage? It's not real," she reminded him, though the words felt less certain than they should. "Isn't it?" His voice held a challenge. "A week ago, we were employer and employee. Now we've survived murder attempts, uncovered conspiracies, and legally bound ourselves to protect two children we both love. That feels more real than most marriages I know. Amara fell silent, unable to argue with his logic, yet unwilling to examine too closely what had developed between them. Trust born of necessity, attraction forged in crisis, connection deepened by shared purpose. Elizabeth chose you, Lucas continued, his voice softening. Not just as the children's protector, but as mine too, I think. She knew what would happen when we discovered the truth together. His hand found hers atop the bed covers, fingers intertwining with natural ease. The simple contact carried more meaning than it should, more comfort than either had allowed themselves to seek. This isn't for them anymore, he murmured, voice barely audible as he traced the line of her jaw with hesitant fingers. This is just for us. Her response wasn't in words, but in the arch of her body toward his, permission and invitation in one fluid movement. The kiss that followed held none of the hesitation of their first desperate connection in the data center. This was deliberate, chosen, an acknowledgement of something neither had planned yet both now recognized. Hours later, wrapped in shared warmth and surprising peace, Amara watched dawn light begin to filter through the blinds. Lucas slept beside her, one arm still protectively curled around her waist, his breathing deep, and even for perhaps the first time since she'd known him. Morning light had barely broken when Amara's phone rang, a number she hadn't seen in years. The voice on the other end shattered their newfound peace. I know you think she's dead, but your sister is alive, and she wants her children back. The woman in the surveillance footage had Amara's walk, Amara's profile, Amara's eyes. But it couldn't be her sister because Nadia Lewis had died on the operating table 4 years ago. Hadn't she? Play it again, Amara demanded, leaning closer to the laptop screen. They'd returned to Atlanta immediately after the call, meeting their private investigator in an anonymous hotel suite. The security footage showed a medical facility entrance, timestamped from 3 days earlier. A woman in a lab coat exited, face partially obscured by large sunglasses despite the overcast day. She moved with deliberate purpose toward a waiting car, her posture familiar in ways that made Amara's heart clench. We've confirmed employee records, the investigator explained. Dr. Nadine Lawrence, hired 6 months ago at the Barrett Institute, a research facility wholly owned by Davenport Industries, Lucas finished grimly. Specifically the division James oversees. The phone call came from inside the facility, the investigator continued. Untraceable prepaid, but the building's security system logged the call's origin. Amara sat heavily on the hotel suite's couch, the world tilting beneath her. It's impossible. I identified her body. Did you? Lucas asked gently. You said earlier they wouldn't let you see her. The death certificate was signed by a doctor on my father's payroll, Lucas reminded her. We've already established they falsified multiple records. Rain hammered against the car windows as they parked outside the remote clinic, the same facility where 4 years earlier death certificates had been signed, grief had been born, and secrets had been buried, perhaps not as deeply as everyone believed. If it's her, she's being controlled somehow, Amara said, studying the building's entrance through rain-streaked glass. The Nadia I knew would never willingly participate in experiments on children. On her own children. Unless she doesn't know they're hers, Lucas suggested. Memory manipulation, identity reconstruction. My father's research division explored neural reprogramming along with genetic modifications. The cruel logic made Amara's stomach turn. She thinks she's someone else. Dr. Nadine Lawrence, Lucas agreed. Research scientist with no memory of pregnancy, surrogacy, or twins. Until something triggered a memory fragment, Amara realized. Enough to make that call. Lucas's hand found hers across the car's center console. If she's alive, he said, gripping Amara's trembling fingers, we'll face it together. But those children have known you as their mother in every way that matters. Biology isn't everything. You taught me that. The clinic's service entrance opened, a figure emerging beneath a black umbrella. Amara leaned forward, breath catching, but it wasn't Nadia. The woman who emerged from the clinic's back entrance wasn't Nadia, but her face stopped Amara's heart nonetheless. It was Lucas's wife, Elizabeth Davenport, thinner and paler than her photographs, but unmistakably alive. His dead wife stood before them, for years of mourning rendered meaningless in an instant. But when she spoke, her words weren't for Lucas. "You kept your promise," she said to Amara. "Now I need one more thing from both of you." The clinic's consultation room felt too small for the magnitude of truths being exchanged, its sterile whites and blues at odds with the messy human drama unfolding. Three people connected by children, secrets, and promises that could no longer be kept. "You're dead," Lucas stated flatly, still struggling to reconcile the woman before him with the wife he'd buried. "I watched them lower your coffin." "Empty," Elizabeth replied, her once vibrant voice now thin and reedy. "By then I was already here, receiving experimental treatment for the cancer." "Treatment you told me it failed," Lucas accused. "Treatment you rejected in favor of hospice care." Elizabeth's gaze dropped. "I rejected standard protocols, yes. But your father offered an alternative, genetic therapy using material from the twins. Experimental, unauthorized, but promising enough that I agreed to the deception. So, you let me think you died?" Lucas's voice broke on the final word. "Let me grieve for 4 years while you were here. Let our children grow up without their mother." The treatment protocols required complete isolation, Elizabeth explained, each word clearly painful. "Any external contact risked infection while my immune system was compromised, and there was no guarantee of success. The survival rate was less than 20%. But you survived," Amara observed quietly. "Yes." Elizabeth turned toward her. "Thanks to genetic material harvested from your sister." The accusation hung heavy in the air. Amara's posture stiffened. "Harvested without consent. Material that cost her life." "I didn't know that then," Elizabeth insisted. "James handled the medical details. I was too sick to question the protocols." Her gaze moved between them. "By the time I understood what had happened, I was trapped here, legally dead, physically dependent on treatments only this facility could provide. And now," Lucas demanded. "Now I'm finally strong enough to fight back," Elizabeth said, her frail appearance belied by the steel in her voice. "James has gone rogue. The genetic program was never meant to exploit children. It was designed to cure terminal illness. He's perverted my father-in-law's research for personal gain." "So you sent that encrypted message," Lucas realized, "about marrying Amara to protect the children." "Yes." Elizabeth's gaze softened as it fell on the matching rings they wore. "I see you follow my advice." As a legal strategy, Amara clarified quickly. A ghost of a smile touched Elizabeth's pale lips. "Of course. Why reveal yourself now?" Lucas asked, still processing the shock of her existence. "Because James is making his final move," Elizabeth replied grimly. "The board meeting was a distraction. While you were defending your parental rights, his team was preparing to access the children directly." "They're safe," Lucas insisted. "Hidden with security." "No one is hidden from James," Elizabeth interrupted. "He has access to every Davenport property, every security system, every contingency plan you've ever created." Elizabeth's final revelation left them breathless. James had orchestrated everything. Her illness, the experimental treatment, the children's conception, as part of a decades-long plan to weaponize the Davenport genetic research. "He's not after custody," she warned. "He's after their blood, and he's already inside your house." The nanny cam showed the twins sleeping peacefully, the nightlight casting star patterns across their ceiling, and the shadow of a man standing silently in their doorway, syringe in hand. "Drive faster," Amara urged, watching the horrifying scene unfold on her phone screen. The remote safe house where they'd hidden the children was still 20 minutes away, even with Lucas pushing the car well beyond legal limits. The Davenport estate gleamed under security floodlights as 3 separate cars converged on the main gate. Lucas from downtown, Amara from the clinic, and Elizabeth from shadows she'd inhabited for years. 3 people who had never planned to be a family, now united by the only thing stronger than blood. choice. Lucas's voice cut through the car's speakers as he remotely accessed the house security system. Emergency Protocol Alpha. Authorization Davenport Prime 72 Delta. On screen, lights throughout the house suddenly blazed to life. Alarms blared. The shadow in the children's doorway startled. Turning toward the sound, James's face illuminated clearly for the camera. "He's running," Amara reported, watching the feed. "Security's responding." "The children?" Lucas demanded, taking a curve so sharply the tires screamed in protest. "Still asleep somehow. The guards are with them now." They reached the safe house gates as the security team was apprehending James. Lucas didn't wait for the car to fully stop before he was out and running. Amara only steps behind him. Elizabeth followed more slowly, her weakened body struggling with the pace. The twins' bedroom door burst open under Lucas's hand. Both children sat up in their beds, startled but unharmed, the security team surrounding them protectively. "Daddy!" Lily cried, arms outstretched. Lucas gathered both children against him, his body shaking with relief. Amara joined the embrace, forming a protective circle around the twins. "You're safe," she whispered against Michael's hair. "You're safe now." Only when the children had been thoroughly checked by the doctor Elizabeth had brought with her, confirming no unauthorized substances had been administered, did Lucas turn his attention to his captive brother-in-law. James sat handcuffed in the safe house living room, surrounded by security personnel, his expression a mixture of defiance and calculation. "You've lost," Lucas stated flatly. "We have everything. The research files, testimony from Elizabeth, video evidence of your attempted assault on the children. It's over." "It's never over," James replied, his smooth veneer finally cracking. "You think you understand what's happening? What those children represent? This isn't about money or patents. It's about evolution itself. It's about consent," Amara countered, standing beside Lucas. "About treating human beings as people, not experiments." "Small thinking from small minds," James sneered. "My brother-in-law, the great Lucas Davenport, too blind to see the future his own father created. A future built on murder and manipulation isn't worth having," Lucas replied. "The authorities are on their way. The board has been notified of your actions. The research division is being shut down pending investigation." Behind them, Elizabeth appeared in the doorway, leaning heavily on a cane but standing on her own. James's expression shifted to shock. He breathed. "You betrayed everything we worked for." "I stopped a monster," Elizabeth corrected quietly, "just as I should have years ago." When the children were finally asleep in their own beds, guards posted outside their doors. Lucas pulled Amara into their bedroom and held her with a fierceness that spoke of nearly losing everything. "I choose you," he whispered against her skin. "Not because of circumstances or arrangements or even the children. I choose you because somewhere between suspicion and truth, I fell in love with exactly who you are." 1 year later, the expanded Davenport family gathered for a photograph that defied conventional explanation. Lucas and Amara in the center with the twins, Elizabeth visiting from her research position overseas, and a foundation established in Nadia's name to help surrogate mothers. The most powerful legacy they had discovered wasn't in genetics or corporate empires, but in the courage to rewrite the rules of what makes a family. Family isn't always what we're born into. Sometimes it's what we build through choice, commitment, and love. Tell me in the comments about a family bond you formed that transcends traditional definitions. If this journey of secrets, identity, and unconventional love touched you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that challenge our understanding of family and connection. Tell me in the comments which part of this complex relations